Okay, my YouTube people, this is the transmission off of my 49 Panhead. I was told 20 some years ago when I bought it that this was rebuilt, but I was also told the engine was rebuilt, and $4,100 later it was rebuilt. So I'm going to tear into this and see what's going on with it. I can see that looking at the case it looks somewhat clean, and they did thankfully use the biter washers. They're always good to use. Looks like somebody's certainly been in it after all these years, more, I'm sure more than once, but screws are a little boogered up, but the plate looks like that's probably original. Originally this bike would have been tank shift, and I do have a tank shift top, which I'll be going back to tank shift. You can see that's cracked on the corner. Looks like there's a big crack right here. You know, it's not do or die with this. It's also cracked right there, and that's from somebody over tightening it. I can see where the keyway is a little banged up. That's not a game changer. It could still be used. Sprocket looks to be in somewhat decent shape. It's got a little bit of wear on it. Looks like an original kicker pedal, since it says Harley Davidson on it, both sides. Looks like somebody did some kind of repair right there. It's probably worn out and somebody put a little weld on it. Alright, we'll see. I have my impact driver, not sure if I need it or not, but it works pretty good just taking out screws. Okay, now the last one. It's funny, these were kind of looser than I would have expected them to have been. This is why anytime I'm buying things, I just assume that it's a core. Because people think that things are worth gold, but then when you get into them, you find out that most people don't know what they're doing when they're rebuilding stuff, and can be damaged pretty good. Yeah, it broke out here. Somebody must not have known that you have to pull the vent in order to get it out. So now I'll just give it a little tap. And there it is. This doesn't look bad at all. Relatively clean. Yeah, and if you look, the drum has a -52 number, along with the case has a -52 number. 52 means it was made in 1952, so prior to that they were tank shift. These are the shift forks here, and I can see the pins loose. I don't think that's supposed to be for the shift fork. I don't think that pin's supposed to be loose. I believe there's a screw down here that tightens it in. You can see there's a screw right here that's supposed to hold this shaft tight, and that screw's moving. So most likely it's either really loose or the threads are bad in it, or it's just the wrong screw. And this is why you have to go into this stuff and really check it. And there you have that shaft. It'll slip right out. There's an O-ring here. I could see that O-ring wasn't replaced. So I could tell already that if this was done at all, it wasn't done right. If you don't replace this O-ring right here, they will leak. So just another reason why I know I have to go into it. You can see the forks are a little rusty here. They all have these caps. These should be replaced. This one looks like it's seen some wear. They both look like they've seen that wear, so they need to be replaced. This is why when I'm buying used stuff, I just automatically assume that I'm buying a good core. Hopefully buying a good core. So take the speedometer drive out. this has what looks to be a cork gasket right there that's hard. So just another sign of that if somebody really rebuilt it like they say they did, it wasn't done right. Assuming that's cork, I'm not positive. Yeah, looks to be. Yep, it's cork. I can see it bending, and there it breaks. So, well, I know what I'm in store for now. Next thing I have to do is get the sprocket nut off. And this stuff is usually all left-handed. Like this is left-handed. And then there's the shaft for the clutch throwout bearing. Doesn't look too bad. It's got a little wear on it, but not too bad. There's a seal in here. Looks like that could be new. Once I buy a transmission gasket kit, they'll have that in there new. So this nut here is 1 7/8", and the way I made the tool for this, I got an 1 7/8" socket, and I had it faced on the front here. I had a machinist chuck it up and make it flat because it's tapered. If not, and this nut's so thin it'll skip right off of it. And then I got a piece of Schedule 80 pipe that's 1 1/4", and then I just welded an 1 1/4" socket to it. And there you have the tool that'll slip onto a 1/2 inch impact gun. So one of the things you have to do is, there's a lock right there. You have to take that lock off of it, and you just get a hammer and just kind of tap it off. Usually the James gasket rebuild kits come with new ones, and then the socket will slip on there. So I believe this is left-handed. I lock it in 2 gears at once. Put it on there. And there it is. Pops right off. Take the lock off of it. And here's what the lock looks like. Take the sprocket off. The dish part goes inward. The flat comes out. But now you can pull this shift fork shaft out. There's that. Like I said, this O-ring needs to be replaced or they'll leak right out there. I'm going to get the... Next I'm going to take the arm off this transmission, and what this does is this moves back and forth, which moves your throwout bearing over here back and forth, and it pushes the rod that goes through the main shaft on the transmission and releases your clutch plates that are over here when the clutch hub's on. So for now, I'll just put the nut back on here so it doesn't get lost. Next, I'm going to remove the kicker arm. I'll put the bolt back in the kicker arm so it doesn't get lost. Next, I'm going to take off the return spring for the kicker arm. It has a tab on here. It fits into this slot here. And then, of course, the hook goes on here and goes like this. To put it back on, you just put it in that slot, and then you twist it around, get it back on that pin. Next, I'm going to pull the shift forks out, and it's important to note how these go in and out. The shoulder on these points to the outside on both of these shift forks. You can see this one is kind of fat up top, and this one is offset. This fork here is for the shifting of first and second, and this fork here is for third and fourth. Now you can see this fork's bad. It's got a burn mark on the metal. It's got some wear, a little bit of wear marks here. It's got a big notch cut in it here where it was rubbing so hard that there's a lip there on this. So this one's got to be replaced. and I'm just probably going to end up replacing both of them. This one's showing some wear out here. These have locks on the nuts, and you can see whoever worked on it before didn't even lock that nut in. There's also spacers in these right here. It's hard to see, but you space these back and forth when you're setting up the transmission. And there's a special tool for that. You can do it without the tool with just using your lid, but it's way easier to do it with the tool, and I'll show that setup. This also must have been sitting for a while because it has a little rust on it. And of course, don't forget your guides are on here. They'll both need to be replaced. Now I'm going to take the kicker cover off. There's a bracket that sits over here where these nuts are, and that's... And now I just take the outer housing off. And there you have it. This is the clutch throwout bearing, and feels to be in pretty good shape. That arm, when it goes back and forth, pushes this fork, which in turn pushes on the throwout bearing that pushes the rod, and those fork fingers sit right into that, like that. So this moves nice and free, doesn't have any side play, so I think it's going to be okay. Again, I open this up and the lock's not really bent over like it should be. And then supposedly this was all rebuilt, but yet there's a big clump of something in here. And I see something was hitting there on this plate. So there's dirt down in the bottom. So whoever rebuilt it didn't know what they were doing, or didn't rebuild it, or both. Get the gasket off. Looks like it's wanting to come in one piece, which would be nice. The way to get these studs out is you double nut them back to back like this, and then I would probably put a little heat on the aluminum, and then you just back them out. Along with these screws that are into the aluminum, I'm probably going to hit those with an impact driver, and I'll show you what that looks like when the time comes, but I'll probably put a little heat on them also. This spring comes down and allows this shaft to turn when you're kicking it, and that's that sound you get when you're allowing the kicker to come back up. I want to go over how to get these studs out. I was able to just turn this one. It was pretty loose. I normally like to put a little blue Loctite on the studs so that when I take the nuts off of them, the stud doesn't come out. So you just put two nuts on here. These happen to be fine thread, 5/8 fine thread. And then you butt them against each other, like so. And then you should be able to put your wrench on the back one, give it a little turn, and then out comes this stud. Now this one does feel like it has some Loctite on it. If you're unable to get these off, then you should really put a little heat on the aluminum, and it'll loosen it, since aluminum expands faster than steel does. Out it comes. You can see what goes in the aluminum is a coarse thread. And then to get them undone, I just put the box stand on each end, like so. Just give them a little squeeze. That loosens the nuts. And then you can just take them right off. And that's how you remove a stud. Next thing I'm going to do is remove the nut off the kicker shaft, or the main shaft. And I'm just going to tap this off with an impact. And that come right off. Even though this has a lock on it, I'm going to Loctite it along with the lock. I probably in this case only used blue. This was a right-handed thread. And then the next you have to get off is this collar, and it's keyed on. And that may require a little bit of heat, we'll have to see. Okay, I decided I'm going to put a little heat on this since it won't just pop off. Now I'm just going to twist these screwdrivers, hopefully. Comes off just like that. Nice and easy. It's a little warm. Not the end of the world. Hot. The easiest way I found to get a key out, that you see there, is just to take a pair of cutters and they just pick right out nice and easy. Easiest way to get them out. And that just came right out. You see that's a square or a rectangular key that goes in there. And then this gear just comes right off. And then the spring. This spring will have to be replaced because it's got a really hard wear mark right there and some pitting and wear over here. Next thing I'm going to do is get these 4 screws out for that bearing retainer plate. And also, I believe this is for oil splash, I'm guessing. This is my impact driver, and you take and set this in, and then you hit it with a hammer, and then as you hit it, it spins whatever, but you put it in first and turn it the direction you want to go. Then you just kind of hold it and give it a tap, and as you tap it, you can see the screws turning until you can just turn it like that. And that's how an impact driver works. And then the screws out. These tools are pretty cheap. If you're not using one much, you don't really need a name brand one as much. But I would be careful with it. I saw a buddy of mine had one from Harbor Freight, and he was hitting it as hard as he could with a big hammer, and a piece that's inside broke and came out the side, went into his hand and gave him stitches. This one's a better one. This one's a Porter Ferguson. I don't know if they still make them or not. Now you can see I have 2 of these out, but I can also see where this one's loose, and that makes me wonder if it's tight at all. So I'll just put this in here. Yeah, you can see that one's loose. Just didn't even have to hit it or anything. This is why anytime you buy anything used, you have to go through it. People want top dollar for stuff, and yet this is what you'll get every time, I've found. So next there's the main shaft nut. Behind it's the bearing, and thankfully on this one the lock is engaged. Next I'm going to take out these straight screws with the impact driver. These screws are a little shorter. This piece I'm taking off is the kickstart stopper. So when you come back up with the kicker, it hits this and stops it from going too far. And it's a big thick metal piece because you don't want that banging into the aluminum of the transmission. You see this is in perfect condition. A little bit of wear on it, but that's no big deal. Next I'm going to open these stops up, and I just take a straight screwdriver, and it's a very light tap. That came right off, no issue. That's also a right-handed thread. The lock has moved a little bit because I'm guessing it was over tightened. So I got to spin that lock around just a hair. I'll just come right here, tap it with the hammer. You can see, and now it loosened up. And there it is off. Next I'm going to take this bearing or bushing cover off. Not sure what this is. And there you see, I barely had to turn it. It's, you know, loose. I imagine they're all loose. Yep. There's the shaft. This has a bunch of grease in it. I'm not sure why. You don't really want to use grease because it doesn't melt. It'll just stay there forever. If you really need something like that to hold something, or you want to pre-lube something, you should really use assembly lube. That ends up melting. Here's the gasket, and again, more grease there. Okay, now the shaft moves, as you see, and then this retainer comes off. And it's pretty clear at this point that the shaft comes out this side. It's going to take a small screwdriver to give it that push, and there's the shaft. That shaft does have a little bit of wear there. Let's clean that up, see what that looks like. I'll have to feel that and feel how grooved that is. Over this side, a ever so slight bit of the hardening is coming off, so I'll have to take a look at that. Not sure how well you can see that right there. And then the gear set should want to lift out of here. Kind of spin it as I'm going. I see one of the roller bearings are starting to fall out. And then the gear set comes right out. You can see here where these needle bearings are there. Also, this shim here sets the end play, and you get different thicknesses of these to set the end play of this gear set. So that'll all need to be looked at. You can see where a couple of those needles came out. Again, you shouldn't really use grease to set them. You should use assembly lube so that when it gets hot, it turns into a liquid. And then allows the oil to get into those, because if you grease them, the grease kind of stays there and doesn't allow the oil to come in, which is what you really want. Down in here looks, I don't know, looks like the oil's been sitting in there, and I'm sure it has. It also looks like it's a little bit of that grease, a little bit of dirt down in there. Never a good thing. Now we'll get the main shaft out. This is a right-handed thread. The bevel on it faces out. I guess that stands the other nut up off of it some. This nut is 1 5/16 inches to get off, and you'll need a deep socket to get down over this shaft. Okay, so this shaft has to get pushed out to the kicker side, and you just give it a couple taps like that, and then the bearing over here pops out. I should be able to pull that shaft right out. Also, I see that the needle bearings in there are coming out with it. So I'm just going to give it a little tap over here. I gave it a couple taps, and I realized there is a C-clip or some kind of clip on here that you have to take off to allow the gear to move free, and that allows the shaft to come out. So I'm going to get that clip off first. Okay. It came up pretty easy there. I imagine you just give it a turn and work it off as you go around. After about a 8-minute fight, then the shaft taps right on out. You just have to line up the gear and out it comes, like so. This shaft looks to be in pretty good shape. I have to take these gears the rest of the way off, but right here is nice. The keyway's a little banged up. That's not the end of the world. Seems to be in pretty good shape. Giving a quick look over the gears, they seem to be in good shape. No pitting. The hardness isn't coming off or anything. Of course, I'll have to clean it up. Although this bearing feels good, I'll be replacing it no matter what. There's this gear. That's a selectable shim on the thickness. I believe this to be third gear. Base of the teeth, that looks good. And here's where the dogs come in. They need to be pretty sharp, these corners. Showing a little wear, but not the end of the world. And that's where this dog comes in and engages that gear like that. You have another shim or washer here. On this dog, there's a bevel on both sides. Side that says, I believe that's a D or an O. That I'm probably guessing that goes towards drive gear. Looks like that was in backwards. I'll have to look at that further. Looks like that D marking goes towards the drive gear, like I said, and I believe that was facing third gear. And then here's the drive gear. This looks a little banged up where the dog would come in. That's this dog here, and when you engage it, it comes down and sets, so it kind of rides out here, and then when you engage it over, that's what you get. Comes in there, and it's showing some pretty good wear here. So check it out a little further after I get it clean. And this dog slides from fourth gear to third gear. That's your third and fourth gear. So the way this works is this dog slides into here and engages third, and then when you shift from third to fourth, this dog slides into fourth, and that's how you go. And then first and second has the same setup, and that one would of course be in the center, which is neutral. Okay. And then you have the needle bearings down in here for the main drive gear. In late '78, they went from these loose needle bearings to a standard bearing, and that cured a lot of its ailments with having to deal with these. There's also a spacer and a seal here, and I'll need to get that out. I believe the spacer has a lip on the back of it. When you bang this spacer out, it'll take this lip seal out, and I'll do that now. Hit it with a hammer. Go to all four corners. Didn't even have to. Okay. Here's the spacer. And then there's your seal, and also got a cork gasket inside that seal. And then I'm going to use the James super nut. Also, if you look, this gasket wasn't put in properly. It's twisted. You can see right there, it's twisted. Should be like that. It's twisted here and here. So just another reason why it was good that I came into this transmission. Then you have this whatever down in here. Looks like hardened grease. That's the other problem with grease. Eventually it hardens. Okay, I want to go over the other gear set with you. This big one is first gear, and you take that off. There's a bushing in here, so you want to check your bushing real good. This one looks good. The shaft looks good here. This is a selectable washer to set your end play. I'll go over what they are. The dogs on this gear look to be good. That's first gear. Here's the dog that slides from gear to gear. Also, all these needle bearings were up in here. They now sell a bearing that goes in here that's captive. So you don't have to stick all those needle bearings in here and then grease them and worry about them falling out while you're trying to put this all together. So I'll go to those new style and I'll show you that. The line on this dog that goes back and forth goes towards first gear, or was towards first gear. I'll double check that that's right. To get your next gear off, you got to remove this clip right here, and I'll do that. And as you can hear, the bearings over here, there's a selectable washer here, and then you see the needle bearings there. They come out, and like I said, there's a captive bearing that I'll be going to that goes in here, and then there's a washer behind those. Again, this is all how I'm taking it apart, and I'll have to refer to the book to make sure that what I'm looking at is correct. Now I'm going to get that clip off and I'll show you behind this. And then the rest of this is all one piece. And these dogs on second gear, or these second gear where the dog goes in, looks really good on this one. The gears on this shaft look really good. There's a brass bushing in the center of this gear. I'll check that. Get these out. I just kind of stick a screwdriver down in them like that and pry them out, and then I try to get a screwdriver in behind them. You can see I was able to do that myself. There's no easy feat, but 3 screwdrivers was the trick. Now you just kind of slide it up off the shaft. The struggle is real at Rap's Garage Shop. There is a washer in there that's got some tangs on the inside. Wouldn't doubt that that's selectable to set some end play. Here's the gear. It looks like it's in amazing, great shape. Here's the bushing that goes in the gear. Like that. And there's where that bushing rides. It's in very good shape. So there's no scoring on this inner race where the needle bearings went, but like I said, the new bearing has an outer race, and it keeps the bearings captive. So even if it were a little messed up in here, I think it would be okay, but it's not, so we're good there. There is a clip in each side of this, and that's I guess that would be the inner race for the bearings, so they just don't go into the middle. So I'm sure that gets left, so when you drive that new bearing in, that's your stop. I have to get the case cleaned up, and also the drain. The threads came out of the drain, so I'll need to helicoil that. I see that the case is cracked here at the adjuster. Hopefully I can get that fixed. If not, it's going to have to work. Thank you for watching the teardown of the transmission. Please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. It helps me out and helps the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I definitely read the questions and try to answer every one of them.